Hello, everyone. Welcome to Security Pulse, your go-to podcast for cutting-edge cybersecurity insights. I'm Taha Sajid, and we are about to get started. For those just tuning in, let me give you the quick rundown. Here at Security Pulse, we are not just talking security. We are revolutionizing it. We provide innovative security solutions and assessments that keep our clients one step ahead of the cybersecurity curve. Think of us as the scouts when you are going to the digital battlefield. Now, on today's episode, we are tackling a topic that is hotter than an overclocked CPU: national security and threat intelligence. And to help us navigate this complex terrain, we have got a true cybersecurity powerhouse joining us. I'm thrilled to introduce Marcela Denniston. And trust me, her background is impressive as our latest security algorithm. Marcela, your journey is truly remarkable. From cyber operators in the US Navy to senior director of threat management at Salesforce, you have been on the front lines of our digital battlefields for over 2 decades. You have built threat management platforms for governments and enterprises, founded your own XDR company, and now you are shaping the security landscape at one of the world's leading tech companies. Not to mention, you are a published author and a fierce advocate for women in cybersecurity. Welcome, Marcela, to the show.
Thank you, Taha, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, guys, whether you are a seasoned pro or a curious tech enthusiast or someone looking for top tier security assessments, stick around because you don't want to miss this show, right? And remember, please, to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. In the world of cybersecurity, staying informed isn't just smart, it's really essential. Okay, let's now start this show, and we want I just want to before we actually go into the question, guys, I want to ask Marcela, because for me, coming from the cybersecurity space myself, when I joined the corporate world, I joined the enterprises. uh, I always dreamt of going to the front line, like joining some national security agencies like a US Navy or an Air Force, and as well as I always have dreamt of like starting something of my own. So whoever has is been on the corporate, they want to go to the national security, and whoever is in the national security workforce, they want to just uh, have the liberty to do something of their own. But Marcella has the privilege to experience all this. So I want to ask her that, in her experience and in her like opinion, which role has she enjoyed the most, and what is the one key takeaway of what I mean she want to give uh, to our audience.
Sure, Taha. So I would say every single one of those roles had their own pros and cons to them, and learning experiences that were extremely beneficial to not only my knowledge in cybersecurity, but also just my career growth in general. I can't specifically say that one or another was better than the other. But I would say starting my own company was probably the most challenging one, and the one that I gained the most life and business experience from. I think once you've put yourself out there to found a company and see what that process is like, you gain a whole new appreciation for people who run businesses, um, and start things from scratch. So I would say that that was probably the most fulfilling, rewarding, and challenging role that I had. Although, working in the government space also had some really great lessons learned. It was very interesting because I started my career there, and I for some reason thought that always had this mindset that the government was so much slower than the commercial world because the commercial world gives you an opportunity for more innovation and moving quicker than the government moves. And then once I joined the commercial world, I realized that that's not always necessarily true. And our government does a pretty decent job about pushing cyber initiatives and innovation in that space. So to answer your question, I think they've all had their own values in different ways.
Yeah, true, and I truly acknowledge and whatever insights you are sharing, because what I also see is that when you are, let's say, in a managerial role in your own organization, and you think that your boss is why he's doing such thing, you don't realize that what challenges he's facing. So it's kind of, we don't feel content and feel happy to what we are doing. We just have to see from the others perspective. But every role has their own challenges, and the best way to just to enjoy is to just love what you do. And if you are enjoying and love what you're doing, like no matter what the role is, you will be able to deliver the maximum out of that. uh, so coming to the cyber threat landscape, as the threats are keep on evolving daily. uh, so and we have seen the role of AI coming in. There are new technologies also coming in. So in your view, what do you think, what are the most significant changes we have seen in the cyber threat landscape over the past few years?
I would say that the one thing that hasn't significantly changed are the goals and motivations of the attackers that are out there, right? So those stay pretty consistent. There's multiple different types of motivations and goals, everything from financial gain to nation state level attacks that are disruptive. But what has changed is the barrier to entry, the ease of scale of an attack, and the sophistication of attack. So, for example, for barriers of entries and ease of scale, we're seeing a lot of ransomware as a service now, right? So you can go onto the dark web today, and there's a massive marketplace for ransomware as a service where you don't have to have any kind of cyber know-how. You can pay someone as something as low as like $50 a month and get access to experienced attackers who will just play out the attacks on your behalf. Some other areas are AI for password cracking. So with the rise of AI and AI algorithms, that really gives attackers the ability to accelerate the password cracking efforts that they have. And this is something that we've actually seen a rise in very recently, in about from like around 2023 on, that these tools are now able to guess complex passwords almost 100 times faster than they would in the past. From a sophistication perspective, we're definitely seeing a rise in nation state actors. Um, Nation state actors, about 80% of cyber espionage that is associated with the theft of intellectual property by hackers is known to be from nation state actors. So we're seeing these very much more sophisticated attacks by people who have been trained by foreign governments and are backed by foreign governments. So they have the money, the infrastructure, and the support to basically carry out attacks that are much more sophisticated than we've previously seen, specifically on critical infrastructures as well, right? And this is the primary countries we see these attacks originating from are China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. So those are kind of the the typical attack organizations or countries that we're seeing these attacks coming from today.
Nice, nice. Yes, I truly agree with you. And uh, you know every day we keep hearing on new threats and new attacks coming in. No matter how state of an art defense we can get, you have to keep yourself updated on new technological like advances, like all that new, like technology that what we are having. We need to keep upgrade ourselves. So like speaking about threats and intelligence, there is, in every organization, even you are doing a startup or a big enterprise, you have like a SOC, a threat intelligence unit, which keep on observing the dark webs, the whatever threats are evolving, how they can stay updated on it. So uh, in your view, what are the some of the groundbreaking approaches in cyber intelligence that you believe are game changers to stay ahead of the threats? Is it something which is like the threat intelligence feeds? Can we just rely on those, or do you think that some of the other things, as an enterprise, we can adopt to stay ahead of all that threats?
This is similar to the question above, right? I think a lot of our techniques haven't changed, but how we utilize technology to support the speed in which we identify the threats is really important. I can't stress enough that speed for identifying threats is extremely critical. So, how quickly can you identify an organization or a group that could be a threat to you? How quickly can you aggregate all of the data and start to build proactive defenses against them? So innovations are coming around through community data sharing, aggregating of data, correlating it across cyber intelligence platforms. And some of the ways that we're seeing this is we're still, it's funny because I worked at a cyber threat intelligence platform back in 2015. I ran a threat intelligence SOC, and back then, threat intelligence was booming. And just like with any other company or any other sector within cyber, you think like, okay, this will probably fizzle out at some point. And I have to say, threat intelligence is one of the areas that has kind of stayed true to requiring more innovation and keeping up from a cyber perspective. Like it's something that's not going away. So I would say the big innovations that we see today is improved collaboration around cyber intelligence sharing. We're seeing more private public sector sharing of information that really makes it possible for us to start to prevent attacks before they happen, right? You have to have the information as quickly as possible so you can start to put those preventative measures into place. I think the rise of using XDR platforms as well, the extended detection and response component, which allows you to take the intelligence information that you know and
Mhm.
apply it across all of the different types of data that you have in your environment and set up those protections so that your systems can automatically detect and respond to them when they're coming into your environments. And then the other one is the deployment of like decoys or digital twins, right? So they're also known as honeypots. This is a bit of a more advanced technology. So this is something that you would probably want to rely on an external vendor or product for. There are many that are out on the market, but them being these businesses being able to aggregate that information from a technology perspective, that gives you kind of that first line of what are the TTPs that we're currently seeing today? How are attackers behaving? So that you can take all of that and then utilize it again to protect and detect and respond more efficiently and more quickly. So it's really about like reducing the mean time to detect and mean time to respond to these attacks.
Nice, nice. I totally agree with you, and this is very good points that you made. So I just want to share one example. So talking about threat intelligence, every organization has their own unit, which they call as threat intelligence, and they have different tools which are getting the data from different source and trying to do correlation and trying to understand what those attacks or what those incidents are. So whenever you, let's say, get an alert as an application owner, the first thing what you notice is, hey, let's contain it. Let's understand the impact of it, and then do the triage once you can limit that thing. And if you are like in a big enterprise, they think that, hey, they are part of the national infrastructure, and uh, whatever attacks they are getting is from external sources like China, Russia, all those places. So can you walk us through like a real world example of cyber intelligence which is in action, which has controlled a major cyber attack, like from happening? Can you just walk us through and give us some like some insights? Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm going to probably sound like a broken wheel because everyone's pretty familiar with solar winds, but I think that solar winds is an absolutely amazing example of threat intelligence in action and giving people access to information to proactively act against a potential attack. So with solar winds, FireEye actually caught this very quickly and
Hmm.
was able to share out publicly all of the information that was required from a TTP perspective, right? What was the vulnerability that was being exploited? What was the malware that had been deployed? What people should be looking for within their environments? And the fact that FireEye so quickly turned that information around and shared it with the rest of the industry probably saved a lot of people from long-term infiltration from nation state, right? Because what nation states typically do is what we call the low and slow. So they want to infiltrate your environment and obviously sit in your environment quietly. They're very good at not getting caught. So by FireEye doing this, they probably prevented many, many businesses from having a nation state deployed in their environment long term, potentially collecting intellectual property, customer data, um, uh, employee information, which later on can be turned around and utilized for other attacks and other purposes. So I have to say that till today, to me, that is still one of the truest examples of a real life example where cyber intelligence was shared and helped to probably successfully prevent a much wider spread uh, situation.
Yeah, totally agree with you. And what we if you talk about examples and like the key takeaway, if I want to take from your example, is that we should be staying vigilant in whatever practices we do in terms of controlling the threats and like audits, like simple practices like software development security, like life cycle, to try to do just exact steps, because people don't realize that they maybe skip, like they don't, because security has always been an afterthought, and people like weigh efficiency more on trying to do some things which is important for them, right? So for me, the key takeaway from like in trying to understand like from the solar wind attack example is to just stay ahead of your own threat landscape, what you are facing, and try to just keep upgrading your practice and making sure that the people who are actually running those tools, they understand those practices, and they know what they're supposed to do, basically. uh, right. So in terms of national security initiatives against critical war grade cyber attacks, with the rise in war grade cyber attacks, what national security strategies you think have proven most effective in defending critical infrastructure? And when I say critical infrastructure, because as you know that we have different initiatives going on in the telecommunication space with 5G IoT coming in. We have different services, like the telecommunication services which are going to the public safety measures. We are seeing a lot of changes. So uh, based on your view, what are some of the national security strategies have proven to be most effective in trying to first of all understand the infrastructure, and then try to guard that, guard it against the attacks?
So again, I think cross collaboration between public and private sector is very important. The more information is shared, the better for active collaboration. And the issue with the sharing of information, right, is nobody wants to share that they've been hacked and expose themselves as not having potentially done the right thing. But at the end of the day, everyone is susceptible to being attacked, and it's a reality that we need to come to terms with. I mean, to be honest with you, this week alone, I've received, I think, 3 letters in the mail saying that my data has been compromised in one shape or another. So these attacks are happening, right, to large scale companies, to the government. So the more that we can share our lessons learned, the better we can prepare ourselves, right? That's something that we do quite a bit of in the government and the military space. So when people join the military, you think that you're just constantly going to be out there, fighting the good fight in the war. But a majority of what the military does is spend time practicing. We practice, we practice, and we practice over and over again until we get things right. So building out cross collaborations and utilizing practice to make sure that we are able to prevent or react to these types of attacks is very important. The other area that the national security initiatives have started to take more of a deeper look on are the defense industrial base, right? So people who are working with the government, they are a very easy target uh, for attackers, and they utilize those weaker targets to basically infiltrate government spaces through collateral movement, right? Or I'm sorry, through moving between the environments. So the national government has actually set up an initiative called the CMMC, which is put into place to defend the industrial base. And what that does is it ensures that these contractors, right, everything from the janitors that are working inside of the government spaces all the way to the highest top secret contractors that are working within the government, have to have a certain level of protections, controls, and measures in place in order to be able to do business with the government, right? And that is to prevent that lateral movement from occurring between the environments. So those are two big ones. The other one is just accountability. The national government is now starting to, we're starting to place more accountabilities on companies and CISOs, the people who are the stewards of the data, of our data, our personal data. They are now starting to be held accountable, right, when they're not doing the right things. And this is very, very important because cybersecurity, typically, when you look at it in the commercial world, the way that it's approached is it's not viewed as a top priority necessarily by executives or boards, right? Why is that? It costs money. There's no, you can't really show. It's very difficult to communicate a return on investment for implementing security controls. And typically, like I said, right, you're going to get attacked. And so I really feel for the CISOs who, the CISOs who are starting to be held accountable. But the truth is, we need to start working with the commercial environments more and making them more aware of how important cybersecurity is for their businesses. And the one way to do that is to hold them accountable. And the government is starting to do that now.
I think you made a very interesting point. Taking care of the CISOs. I feel sorry for them as well because what I noticed is is like this is the business executive guys. So they just want to make sure that the application is running fine, the performance, like the criteria, the metrics are being achieved. And whenever there is a talk about, hey, can we do this DR, the disaster recovery assessment, or can we do this like a dry run of making sure that we are doing our best security practices, and they tend to just go away from that, and they just make sure that they just do the bare minimum. So in your experience, I know like you have been in like different facets in your career. So uh, what are some of the techniques which you think uh, have worked in trying to convince the leadership that, hey, this is really important, and you need to have security, like that's it. And yeah.
I think the best way to showcase that is to provide them with situational awareness of what's happening to other businesses in the same industry, right? If I can showcase to a board, um, this is what recently happened to a company that's very similar to ours. And these are the repercussions that the company suffered, right? These are the things that happened to the company after the fact. This is how much money they lost. This is how much time they lost. This is the reputation that they lost. That's going to speak more to a board and to executives, right, than me telling them, hey, I implemented a new security control that could potentially prevent this type of attack from happening. So it really comes down to when you're talking to at that executive level is the dollar signs, right? How can I show them that I am likely saving them a lot of money in specific types of attacks? And the only real way to do that is to pinpoint some real world examples of how that's happening and what I would be doing as a security leader to prevent that from happening at my company.
Nice, nice. What has worked for me as well in this context is, so um, we have been so earlier when I joined, as a the security lead, I have to design the architecture, and when we first presented this design that, hey, we are missing on some of the important controls, and this is where we need to place those controls, right? They said that, hey, why do we need it? I mean, it is like a heavy cost for it. So what worked for me is to show the default controls, what those products are already having, and what are those missing things that we can do. And I try to do a threat modeling piece where I have to map some attacks on the architecture, and just to justify those attacks, that those can be real, we try to uh, we engaged our red team in trying to do some exploitations, and when we uh, exploit it, were we able to exploit it, then we show them the dollar thing, what you were just saying, by telling the data what those applications contains, because usually if you talk about an infrastructure, that like the data are mainly the IP addresses, the network information, as well as they may be having some subscriber data. So this is something, if you cannot just, so coming to your point, that you have to show them first of all, hey, this is what you have, and then have some use case and a story of a similar attack happened to that, so that they know that, hey, this is to accept, and then to have them accountable. For example, have to like they should sign off on this, that, hey, if something goes like, if something bad happens, then it will be our responsibility for that, and when they'll be able to sign off, because they don't usually sign off on these things, right? So when they'll be coming to a stage to sign off, then they may be thinking that, hey, maybe I should use this, maybe it's he's making sense,
Yeah. So that risk acceptance, what you're describing is risk acceptance, right?
Yeah,
That's typically something that the CISO is expected to sign off on and be responsible for, right? So am I going to accept the risk that if a similar attack happened in my environment, I run a simulation, I identify here are all of the potential losses or the potential repercussions of that attack. Am I willing to accept that risk? I think that that risk needs to be defined to the board. The board needs to be communicated. This is how much, if something like this happened within our environment, this is what it's going to cost from a people, money, infrastructure, brand perspective. Um, they need to at least be informed of that. But I know that because a lot of times in the boardroom or in the executive space, the leadership there lacks the knowledge of cybersecurity or these advanced technologies. It does become difficult to communicate that. So it does have to be more of a business case. And I think that in those scenarios, typically the CISO is expected to accept that risk. The CISO is the one that's going to be making those decisions ultimately, right? Like how is the CISO
yeah,
going to employ the budget? Now it's the CISO's responsibility to communicate this so that maybe he can get more budget or he can, build out his strategy to protect against these types of attacks. But ultimately, it falls on that person.
nice, nice, well said. It's hard, but we have to do this as part of the industry, as part of the role. We have to do this. The hard decisions. Yeah. Okay. So talking about cyber intelligence, talking about the future, there is a lot of talk going on AI, how AI is influencing cyber threat intelligence, the role of quantum computing. Are we quantum resistant or not? I mean, are we have enough technology to prevent those attacks happening from quantum computers? Uh, and then we are going to the cloud native world where everything is microservices. If you talk about architecture, we have Kubernetes, we have a lot of we have gone from monolithic towards some like microservices architecture. So if you have to predict like the future for the cyber intelligence, uh, let's say, which tools you want to use, maybe which different platforms you have to be engaged on, uh, what resources you need to have. So if you want to, let's say, do a business readout that, hey, this is the predictions for the future of cyber intelligence and this is what you need to do, how do you go about this?
Okay, I'm going to try to unpack that a little because I think there were a lot of questions in there. Let's start with the quantum computing component. I think from a quantum computing perspective, today an attacker can intercept encrypted data, right? So they can basically start to ingest and hoard all of these encrypted data sets. And then when quantum computing does become more feasible, they could probably easily decrypt those very quickly. So we're from that perspective, I think there's going to need to be a component of developing post quantum cryptography that will help to protect against password cracking, in particular, from a quantum computing perspective. I think to answer some of your other questions around AI, how can we utilize AI in the future? I'm very excited. I'm scared of what AI is going to bring, but I'm also very excited at what it could potentially bring to the threat intelligence world. There's a few different types of AI that are available today. So, for example, with an agent-based AI, I could easily see uh, organizations running attack simulations and allowing the agent models to learn them, right? And then make it very easy for an analyst or an operator to basically understand what that attack looks like and implement controls to prevent it. So with agent-based AI today, right? So I can feed the system information from previous attacks. I could feed it TTPs. I could feed it reports that are coming from different threat intelligence sources, and then I no longer need an expert at the other on the other end of the prompt, right, of the screen. I can
Mm,
just say,
mm,
if an attacker was to run this attack, tell me all of the ways in which my system could be affected, right? Or my environments could be affected. So this is something that I think will really help us reduce the ability to be proactive against attacks that could be, by having someone again understand what's currently happening today, what are some of the current events that are occurring in the industry or industry similar to mine, and then once I identify those, I can use AI to run those simulations and learn from the simulations very rapidly, as opposed to having, a full red team or a really in-depth analyst with a lot of knowledge to basically build out those TTPs for me. Some other areas is having context-based information, so having text to action. And text to action is a really interesting one because it kind of goes hand in hand with this agent-based concept, that you could basically build out your own attack simulations, right? You can say, I want to build, you can talk to the AI and tell it, I
yeah.
want to build an attack simulation that mimics a specific threat actor, for example. And then it will basically play that out for you. We even have the ability to, with context-based or text to action information, you could even have it basically produce or develop a program or a product for you that will basically solve your cybersecurity problems. And then the last one I would say is probably the generative AI, and that's creating detections on the fly, right? It's basically creating the ways in which you will protect, detect, and respond without needing to have in-depth knowledge of how to create those detections. And we're seeing that today already in some products, where you could use generative AI to just use common language to say, hey, I want to build a detection that prevents against XYZ, and it will write a detection rule for you that you can then deploy very quickly. So again, it's really about that. What I see coming in the future is speed and scale. The information component is interesting because cyber intelligence again is all about having data, having information sharing, and AI is really giving us the ability to fast track into gathering all of that data in one location and utilizing it in a much more efficient and faster way than we have in the past.
Yes, yes. Totally makes sense, very well explained. And I just want to add few points in here. When we talk about AI, Gen AI, it all looks good, but there has to be a proper governance of that, because the same AI model or the Gen AI, like the LLM, what you are using, maybe a threat actor can also be using the same one. So you have to be like mindful of what algorithms or what Gen AI platform you are using. And secondly, as the cyber intelligence is evolving and the future looks, interesting and attractive, I would say like data privacy issues also needs to be thought into, when we talk about data sharing, handling, or like the personal information of the users, whatever the intelligent like tool you are using, you have to do your due diligence in trying to make sure that like the data privacy measures are well taken care of. So yeah, thank you very much, Marcela, for sharing your insights. So any like closing thoughts? What do you want to give? I know like you have been a strong advocate of like women in cybersecurity as well. I want to touch based on that as well as we are closing. Uh, so like all the women's who are like watching this show, we have Marcela. You can like reach out to her if you want to excel in this career. So what women who are like graduating and getting into cybersecurity, if they want to join different groups, like how they can just reach to a level to where you are, and what do you think on this? Any like thoughts on this?
So I would say by all means, no one should ever let their gender, race, personal characteristics define whether they should or shouldn't enter a field. Um, I was admittedly put into cyber by chance when I joined the military. It wasn't necessarily that I chose that path directly. I went into cryptography, and it happened to be during the beginning of when cybersecurity started to become a real thing for the government, when we started seeing nation state attacks from China. And so they very rapidly started to build out those capabilities. And I got sidetracked into that role. I'm very glad that I did, because it's been very interesting. And I would say that if you're trying to start your career off, there are plenty of I don't want to say support groups because that makes it sound negative, but there are many groups that are geared towards women in cybersecurity. There's the Cyber Jitsu organization. There is Women in Cybersecurity. There are also smaller groups, but what I'll say beyond that is don't just focus on the groups that are built for women. There are tons of other groups and organizations out there that are good to get your foot in the door with in order to start to build out your career. And this in cybersecurity, it's really all about your community. Um, I very much have leaned into networking and, staying in touch with the network, staying in touch with what's happening in the current events for cybersecurity, and that has definitely helped me in growing and expanding my career. Um, but then also it's about, you have to pick what you want to do, just like with anything else. Cybersecurity has so
Yeah.
many different facets to it. I had a very random career, I would say. If a lot of people look at my background, they'll say like, "Wow, you jumped around a lot. You've done a lot of different things." I did that on purpose. I like to learn new environments. I like to learn new industries. For me, that's kind of what makes me tick. And so some people may see that as potentially a negative because I never really stopped in one location and hyper focused on it. But I thoroughly enjoyed being able to spend some time in the government and seeing how that operates, and then working in the startup world and seeing how those businesses operate, and then moving into enterprise and seeing how the enterprise world operates, and taking all of the different lessons learned from those different environments and applying it to how I um, build my cyber strategy in whatever team I'm managing, running, or working in. So from the getting your foot in the door, I mean, if you're already getting a degree or you're focusing on specific technical trainings, I would say try to identify what your end goal is going to be. Like, do you want to become a CISO? Do you want to become a security architect? Do you want to become an offensive security practitioner? And then once you identify that, then you can start to build out your career path, getting into the right networks, participating in the right events. And that's really the best way to go about it in cyber.
Yeah, yeah. Very well explained and very well said. I just want to, there's one point that you mentioned that he understand what you are good at, and maybe understand like if you want to become a security architect or a CISO, how would you understand that what where do you really belongs to is when you start learning the technology, getting into like the research of different cybersecurity options, try to see where you can add value, and what interests you. So in and try if you want to figure that piece out, try to get your hands on into some labs activities, because there is some one thing which is theory, which is content, which you can, see, like there's a lot of content available, YouTube videos, all those things. But try to get some hands-on experience like labs, try to, do some offensive testing and do some, blue teaming, and see where your interests are. And then take that field and, yeah. And in this with this platform like Security Pulse, we do exactly this. We have lab setup, so if you are just beginning your career and want to explore more on different aspects of cybersecurity, please feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to help you.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Having hands-on experience is important because wanting to do something and having the like the capacity to do it is very different, especially in cyber. Cyber can be extremely technical, as you know, but it can also be very business focused, right? Being a CISO is very different than being an offensive security practitioner, for example. So if you're not sure what you want to do and you have the ability to find a platform or a group that will let you dabble in certain areas, gain some experience, see if that's something that really interests you, that's probably a really good way to go about it.
Got it. Got it. So we have a few interesting questions, Marcella, for you. We have a team who does the research, and they have asked me some some burning questions, I would say. So I'll just throw it to you. So one is, how has the ongoing conflict in Ukraine changed the landscape of cyber warfare and national security concerns globally? So we actually live in the world where everything is going on. There is always a headline, like good or bad. So what do you think? Like, what should we do about it? And is there a how the national security concerns has increased maybe, or like what's your take on this?
The Ukraine-Russia war is very interesting when it comes to cyber. I think this is probably one of the first real-world examples of where we're seeing cyber warfare in action, right? I believe it was in 2016, Ukraine, we had that blackout, right? That was caused by malicious code that was later attributed to Russia. That was like a very big first world example of just the type of attacks and how they could affect a country on a national level that were very, very scary, right? That was very scary. Um, and this was actually, there was a second attack that basically attempted to combine the kinetic and the cyber attack component of it on the cyber grid. So it left the Ukrainians without any power, right? So this is Russia's way of being able to assert their dominance in a situation of saying, like, hey, this is something we can do, right? We can cut off all your power. We can poison your water. We can, we could basically create a mass effect on the entire population and citizens of Ukraine. And then later in December, I think 2023, um, Ukraine's the largest telecommunication company in Ukraine also was attacked, right? And this was most likely by Russian state-sponsored actors. And that created like mass interruptions for telephone and internet services, which obviously are utilized by the government, by the soldiers in Ukraine. So we're starting to see these types of cyber attacks actually have a significant impact on war level activities and the citizens of the countries that are in these in these war states. Um, it's scary. I think the for me, someone who has been working in this a very long time and has had a significant amount of time in the government, these are things that the government it's always been on the government radar. They're aware that these nation states are able to conduct these types of attacks. How we bring them more to light, obviously, is when we're dealing with critical infrastructure, when we're dealing with um, systems and environments that are required for the livelihood of our citizens. We really need to place more attention on the controls and measures. And I think that there does need to be probably more government involvement in ensuring that these it's very interesting because these critical infrastructures are oftentimes they're run either by partial government or government and private sector. Um, and so I think that there needs to be more interaction from the government in ensuring that there are controls in place and policies to ensure that these environments are more protected.
Yes, yes, interesting. Really, I you reminded me. I reminded like one story. Wanted to share now as you are speaking about Ukraine and like Russia. So I was in my uh, uh, so I'm also an author. So I was at a book speaking event in one of the libraries. And one of the guys in the attendance who were just attending this show asked me a question that, hey, if let's say Russia attacked US and the banks got closed, and there is nowhere we can withdraw our money, the ATM got crashed and the banks got seized, so can Bitcoin help us in that country? I was like, what is going on, how should we answer this, but we live in a world where everything is happening, so I mean, we don't know what is coming next to us, so whatever alternative ways we can get, and in trying to get ahead of ourselves would work, so if you, let's say, just relying on one mode of defense, just try to get another mode of defense as well. Like, you don't know at the time of attack what works and what cannot work, so just there is a thing, like there's a term called in cybersecurity which is defense in depth, and it goes from in all other aspects as well, so try to have your plan B in place, plan C in place, maybe like something will work for you. Okay. I have one more question for you, which is, so there are different skills needed when you want to work for government, right? And as well as we see like there is a shortage in skills of cybersecurity, so one question which has like two parts to it: if a government wants to hire somebody towards its national security initiatives, what skills would they be interested in, and is there any like clearance thing which comes in? I know like there is like some special sort of clearance which is needed when you want to work for government related projects. And then like secondly, if you are, let's say, a cybersecurity professional who are seeking some government related projects, how you can get into it?
So it'll probably, I don't know if this will come as a surprise to you, but the government actually has some really great programs already in place to recruit cybersecurity professionals. And I would actually say that the government probably has some of the best cybersecurity training that exists. So they
Oh,
don't necessarily rely on external training. They have their own training in house that helps to develop and build some of the best cyber experts and professionals that there are in the market, which is why having the government experience on your resume ends up being such a positive component of your career, right? If you have that, you've worked at the NSA or the CIA or the FBI in a cyber unit, it's pretty. It gives you another echelon of, I guess, trust, right, as in your abilities. So what they do today is they do have the national government has programs in place where they work with specific universities that have cyber programs and careers. And during their career days, or as part of their programs, they basically will market and offer these positions to some of the best and brightest minds in the universities and the schools. So there are fellowships that are available to those, or internships that are available to those that are in current cyber programs in college. Um, the great thing about the government too is that you don't need to have a degree, right? I joined the Navy when I was 17. I didn't have a degree. I was, I had the aptitude and the knowledge to be able to be trained in cybersecurity, which is what they're looking for. But you can come straight out of high school if you have a desire to go into a cyber program, you can come straight out of high school and go straight into the military and be put into some of the best cyber programs that exist in the country. There are also other initiatives. The National Initiative for Cybersecurity and Education. It was actually a part. I was part of the working group there, and they meet regularly and help to basically build out the workforce framework and foundation for increasing the U.S. cybersecurity workforce. So that's another way that you could get your foot in the door. As far as clearances go, I would say that a majority of the jobs today in cybersecurity within the government do require you to have a clearance. So yes, and that is not a fun or easy process, nor does it allow just for anyone to join, unfortunately, right? You have to be a US citizen, you have to go through
Yeah, yeah,
extensive
yeah.
background checks and lie detector tests.
Oh,
But once you do get that clearance, it's very valuable, right? From a financial
yeah.
perspective, and then also just from a maintaining it and having it perspective if you want to work within national security. The last thing
So
I'll say on that is that there's actually another point of entry that I don't think is as commonly known, and it is the National Guard. So interestingly enough, I don't know how many people are aware of the National Guard, but the National Guard is essentially like a state level component of military, right? That's typically they're deployed in situations of like a state emergency. So when there's like floods or wildfires or any kind of like civil unrest, they would deploy the National Guard. And many states have a pretty significant cybersecurity unit within the National Guard, um, that's basically there put into place in case of a large scale attack on the state, right? Not like a cyber attack on the state. And the barrier to entry there is actually a little bit lower. They don't, because you're specifically going in to do a cyber job. Like they don't necessarily expect you to be, war ready as much as the regular military. It's a little bit of a lower barrier to entry, and they have some pretty significant programs in like red teaming and pen testing, and then just regular security operations. So that's actually another option for people who are looking to get into this field.
nice, nice. I want to share my perspective as well. There is, if somebody, for example, is working in an enterprise in a cybersecurity role, what they can also do. There are different working groups available on, let's say, IEEE. There is a good organization which has different working groups for security and privacy. There is Cloud Security Alliance, which is also running some good working groups. So take a topic which is of interest for the government, which is, for example, zero trust security, something which knows it's not only the buzzword, but government is also taking interest in it. And what the government has done is they have like collaborating with different of these organizations, and within those organizations they have different working groups. So if you can join those working groups, you can work on some papers, try to publish the papers, and from there you'll get some attention on, people will start acknowledging your efforts. And then they also are getting the projects from the governments, so which is how you can participate, and if you can do good, you can be directly hired.
Yep, there's the option of becoming a defense contractor, right? You don't have to be in the government or military to work for the government or military. When I got out of the military, I worked as a defense contractor. You still need a clearance. You're still doing really, really cool work for the
Yeah,
government, but you're not necessarily, in the government. And I think maybe the other thing that people don't realize is you can go to nsa.gov and they have a careers page. So like if you want to get into cyber for the NSA, you literally just go to their website and it will tell you
yeah,
like here are the steps you need to take to apply. And the same goes for the other government agencies as well. So
yeah.
there are actual pages that you can just go to and they'll and apply for these jobs.
Yeah, and the good part, I think you mentioned a very good point earlier in one of your responses, is you need to be good at networking. So I'll tell you a funny story. So I was in a conference. I was speaking, giving a demonstration on how you can be attacked through a phishing attack. Okay, and there was one gentleman sitting in the audience who was constantly watching me like this, staring me out. I was like, what's going on? Maybe I was not, talking the well what he likes. And when I finished my talk, there was a lunch break. Like that person came to me. He was like he asked my name, that hey, like hey, I know you, I've seen you in some conference, who are you, can you give me your number? I was like, what's going on? So he gave me his card, and he is from the FBI. So he was like, I was like, hey, why why like what does he need from me? But like then we became friends, and then he, like, we still in talk. So the thing is, like they are people from all these organizations. They are attending conferences again. They are part of different working groups. So if you are good at networking, you can easily identify those people. And if you are good at what you do, they can come to you. So that's like something which you need to be aware. Just like go to conferences, go to these networking groups. Maybe you'll find someone.
Absolutely. I think some of like the best opportunities that I've come across were from networking at events as well. I attended a very random event here in the Bay Area one time. It's called Bay Brazil. It happened. I'm Brazilian, um, and I happened to attend that event and run into a VC that was looking for a cyber expert to help them vet technology so that they can do their cyber investment. And when I was consulting, I helped them do that for a while. It was just very by chance, right? I didn't expect that to happen, but just being in the right place at the right time and networking with the right people can definitely help in ways that you could probably not even imagine.
Yeah, true. So that brings us to the end of our discussion, guys. Like, thank you, Marcela. It's been a pleasure to have you with us. I really enjoyed, talking with you and discussing all those, interesting like Q&As and discussion points. I myself learned a lot from you, and I'm sure the audience have really enjoyed our discussion. uh, I wish you all the best in your career, in whatever amazing things you are doing. So people like whoever watching this show, Marcela, she's like active on LinkedIn, and she's very responsive. So if you need help of any sort, please reach out to her. And if you are looking for help in trying to excel in cybersecurity careers, doing some hands-on labs, be involved in different projects, we at Security Pulse provide like exactly all these things. So we'll be happy to help you as well. Uh, so any like closing thoughts, Marcela? Any something you want to like tell to your audience before we leave?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on the show as well. And yes, by all means, I'm very accessible. I love to support people who are trying to get into the field, who are trying to grow their career. I know it's a challenging space to be in, so I'm happy to be a resource in any way that I can.
Wonderful. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Until next time, we'll see you in the next podcast, and take care very much of yourself. Okay, goodbye.
Right.